The tension in the TV debate studio was palpable. Under the glaring lights, two of the most polarizing figures of contemporary America sat facing each other, ready for a televised discussion that would shake the nation to its core. On one side, Bernie Sanders, 84 years old, with his characteristic wild hair, rhetorically dangerous. He was no longer just the face of a political movement, but now a symbol of a generation yearning for radical change. In his simple suit with a typical Sanders smirk, cool, calculating, and full of conviction, he entered the stage. He hadn't come to debate, he had come to dominate. Opposite him sat Keanu Reeves, not the taciturn movie star known from the big screen, but a man who, after a career of cinematic battles, had found the courage to take on a different kind of responsibility as a voice of reason in an era of division. A former blockbuster star, the son of a performer, someone who had never bought his acclaim but had always earned it. And now he sat there, still, upright, with an inner calm that was provocative. What happened in the next 30 seconds would be seen on social media in an endless loop. Not because it was loud, but because it was real, and because it changed everything. Save these stories for your mom, your dad, even your future grandchild. Don't forget to subscribe. Mr. Reeves, Sanders began in a voice as sweet as honey, but with an undertone like a razor blade. Perhaps it's time for you to stop pretending to understand what it means to be a working-class American and instead return to where you came from. The sentence didn't fall, it exploded. A murmur went through the studio. The host, a seasoned journalist, gasped. Viewers across the country paused. On Twitter, a firestorm. The hashtag We're All Working Class began to trend. Many called it the most openly classist statement ever made live on American television. But Keanu Reeves, he didn't flinch. No furrowed brow, no smile, just this quiet, unwavering silence. The kind of silence that makes people nervous, the kind of calm that comes from someone who no longer has anything to prove. Because what he was about to say next would not only shake Sanders' political foundation but also cast an uncomfortable light on the question, who truly belongs in this country and who gets to decide? Keanu Reeves' path could not have been more different from his opponent's. Born in Beirut, raised in Toronto, his childhood was marked by adaptation, not privilege. No silver spoons, no connections, just a fierce will, clear principles, and a relentless work ethic. As a teenager, he stood in wind and rain on movie sets, training alone while others slept. He worked his way up not through volume but through precision, not through drama but through deeds. He became a global icon not by chance but through determination. He was never the loudest in the room, but when it counted, people listened. After his acting career, he began to dedicate himself to social entrepreneurship, mental health awareness, and ethical technology. No grand speeches, no party affiliation, just facts, responsibility, and a deep sense of justice. That's why he was appointed to the Expert Commission on Technology Ethics in Washington. Not because of his celebrity, but because of his integrity. But not everyone was thrilled about it. Too independent, some said, too uncomfortable, and above all, not the image one had of a political advisor. Because Keanu Reeves was not loud, he was effective. And that's precisely what made him dangerous to those who preferred to believe in surfaces. Bernie Sanders made the same mistake as many before him. He underestimated the man sitting opposite him. This debate was more than just a clash between two personalities. It was a symbol of America in our time. A country torn between inclusion and exclusion, between origin and attitude. Not just a TV show, but a cultural earthquake. Broadcast live. Sanders acted as a voice for those who believe America is losing its way, that everything is moving too fast, that tradition is fading and identity is becoming diluted, that only those whose family histories are deeply rooted in the American soil can truly understand what the country needs. But opposite him sat someone he couldn't categorize, a man who didn't fit the mold. No party card, no megaphone, just a life full of discipline, loyalty, and deeds. Every subscriber helps these stories reach more people. Subscribe now to leave a legacy for your mom, dad, and family. Keanu Reeves was not the heir to a system, he was its counter-evidence, The proof that home is not inherited but earned, not through blood but through stance, not through a name but through decisions. The topic of the debate was actually cybersecurity, a seemingly safe territory for Sanders. He had often made statements on social media platforms, tech giants, and data privacy, but Reeves didn't just have statements, he had experiences. The host opened calmly. The first few minutes proceeded routinely. Party lines, rehearsed cliches. Sanders spoke first. "This country needs leaders who think for the people," he said. "Our data is being sold, our privacy is ignored, and the citizens pay the price." Then it was Reeves's turn. Calm, composed, precise. "I have spent 2 decades of my life recognizing real threats, not imagined ones. What is dangerous is not recognized by a person's net worth or their background, but by their actions, their structures, their systems." He paused. "We protect our country not through fear, but through truth." His voice wasn't loud, no pathos, no theatrics, but every word carried weight. Then the air in the studio changed. The host asked the next question. It was about the social responsibility of the tech industry, and that's when Sanders struck. "We finally need people in politics," he said, as his gaze turned sharp and cutting toward Keanu Reeves, "who truly understand what American values mean. People whose loyalty is never in question." The audience began to stir. Individual glances became fixed. It grew quieter, but Reeves remained motionless. "Not yet," he answered calmly. "I think my life speaks for itself. I have served my country, in my work, in service to society with every decision I've made. I have never asked for applause. I have simply done my part. If that isn't loyalty, then I don't know what is." But Sanders didn't let up. He had a plan and he would see it through to the end, whatever the cost. "It's easy to say you're loyal," he continued, "but true Americans don't need to prove it. They feel it in their blood." The sentence fell like a gunshot. True Americans. The studio fell silent. The host leaned forward in her chair. In the control room, eyebrows were raised. On Twitter, it exploded, "True Americans, we are America." Pride through action. Keanu Reeves's jaw tensed for only a moment. Then his voice came, cool, razor-sharp. "Mr. Sanders," he said, "are you seriously suggesting that American citizenship is a matter of lineage and not of values, duties, or willingness to sacrifice?" Sanders didn't hesitate. No backing down. On the contrary, he doubled down on his attack. "I say," he now answered with a pointed voice, "some of us feel America in our bones, others have to learn it from books." A murmur went through the rows. A woman in the first row covered her mouth in shock. A cameraman unintentionally mumbled into his open microphone, "Damn, that's not a normal debate anymore. It's gotten personal and it's far from over." Bernie Sanders had crossed the line and Keanu Reeves was about to show him how a true patriot responds. He had made his decision, and now it was clear he was no longer debating policy. He was attacking Keanu Reeves's very right to see himself as part of this country. "He likes to talk about values," Sanders said with a calm but cutting voice. "But when it really comes down to it, where does his loyalty lie? When he looks in the mirror in the morning, does he see an American or something else?" The air in the studio was sucked out. No one stirred. This was no longer theater. It was a frontal assault on identity, belonging, on the very heart of what home means. The host opened her mouth, then closed it again. She didn't know whether to intervene or let history happen. In the control room, editors sat frozen. Glances darted between screens and heads. "Are we really letting this go live?" One look asked another. Viewers at home held their breath, especially those who knew this feeling. Children of immigrants, soldiers' kids, people whose Americanness had been questioned again and again. They knew that look, that suggestion that you can never fully belong if you weren't born in the right place, with the right name, with the right history. But Keanu Reeves didn't move, didn't blink. He just looked at him with that same quiet, iron calm that used to make defenders tremble and now disarms demagogues. A look that said, "You have long since lost, Mr. Sanders," he said quietly. "You should be very careful with the path you're taking." But he didn't stop. Perhaps he didn't understand the warning. Perhaps he didn't care. "Mr. Reeves, you have served this country, and I respect that," he continued. "But you know," Sanders continued, his tone now honey-sweet and razor-sharp at once, "there's a difference between serving this country and truly understanding it. Some of us are born with that understanding. Others—" He paused, a theatrically perfect break. "Others try their whole lives to prove they belong." The sentence wasn't a shot, it was a scalpel cut. Precise, surgical, served with a smile that clearly showed the blade behind it. Keanu Reeves nodded slowly as if he had been waiting for this exact moment. "I see," he said calmly. "So you believe American identity is inherited, not lived. It lives in the blood, not in decisions. An interesting point of view, especially for someone who relies on the Constitution." Sanders' voice grew more strained. "I believe that America should be led by people whose loyalty is never in question, people who never had to prove they belong." A stir arose in the studio, scattered applause, murmuring furrowed brows. The host received frantic signals in her earpiece. In the control room, they argued wildly, cut to commercial or let it run because something massive was about to unfold. And then Keanu Reeves did something completely unexpected. He smiled. Not a triumphant grin, not mockery, but the quiet, knowing smile of a man who held the truth in his hand while his opponent was still playing with platitudes. "Mr. Sanders," he began, his voice as deep as a verdict, "if we're talking about who truly belongs, may I tell you a story?" He blinked just once. His smile flickered. "It's about my family," Reeves continued, "and about yours. And by the end of this evening, every viewer will know who here has the right to question whose loyalty and who better be silent." Sanders noticeably shifted in his chair. The first crack. "You see," Keanu said. His voice was now clearer, more certain, unshakable. "I have worked for years in film production. You learn a simple rule there. Trust is good, but due diligence is better. So when I found out I'd be debating you today, I did my homework." A murmur went through the room. A cameraman stopped panning. The assistant director held their breath. Sanders's face lost color. "I don't know what you think you found," he mumbled. But his self-assurance had vanished. His voice betrayed him. "Oh, I think you know very well," Reeves countered. His smile deepened. "But don't worry, I'll tell everyone in a moment." He leaned forward, hands clasped, his gaze fixed on Sanders's face. The spotlights cast a harsh light on his forehead. The silence in the room was palpable. What came next wouldn't just turn this debate around, it would go down in American television history. The sheen that Bernie Sanders had worn at the beginning like armor was now fragile, visible, human. He had believed Keanu Reeves would take his attacks with dignity and move on. He hadn't counted on him coming armed with facts. "You know," he said, his voice calm but increasingly firm, "when you work in my world, you learn early on. You don't have to be loud to be dangerous. You just have to be prepared." He reached into his jacket pocket and calmly pulled out a light gray file folder. "It's all publicly available," he explained. "Anyone can read it, but I don't think many Americans really know the truth about their family history." The camera zoomed in, the audience held its breath. In the control room, hands flew over mixing desks, but no one dared to cut to commercial. The ratings had gone through the roof, and all of America was watching. "Let's start with my story," Keanu Reeves said calmly, as he opened the folder with remarkable precision. "My parents came to America in the 1960s with no possessions, no connections, just with courage and the hope of building something through hard work. My father worked 3 jobs at once: a stagehand by day, a waiter at night, and a busboy on weekends. My mother cleaned offices and babysat other people's children." His voice remained calm, but in his eyes a fire blazed that burned deeper than anger. It was dignity. They didn't come to take. They didn't expect handouts. They believed in one idea: if you work hard and follow the rules, you can make a better life for your child. He looked directly at Bernie Sanders. "My father never applied for welfare. He never asked for special treatment. He didn't believe this country owed him anything. He earned every dollar, every opportunity with his own hands, and with that money he sent me to acting school. The studio is now deathly silent. Even Sanders' most vocal supporters paused. When I was old enough to serve, I didn't hesitate for a moment, Reeves continued. I served, I took risks, I worked in programs for mental health awareness, I appeared in inner cities, I dismantled networks that wanted to endanger this country's youth. I was threatened, I was slandered, I spent nights in neighborhoods where my background could have been a death sentence. He made a long pause, letting the weight of this reality sink into the room. And all for one single reason, to protect lives in this country. Then he turned away from Sanders and looked directly into the camera, to the living rooms, the phones, the news feeds of the viewers. When Mr. Sanders tells me to go back to where I came from, he is not just speaking to me, he is speaking to every child of an immigrant, to every family that has ever toiled, believed, and sacrificed in this country. Applause went through the audience. Some clapped, standing, but Keanu raised his hand. I'm not finished yet, he said, because the most revealing story isn't mine but yours. Sanders flinched for the first time. Keanu opened the folder completely and pulled out several pages. Mr. Sanders loves to talk about what true American values are. He has built his entire political brand on it. Authentic, patriotic, deeply rooted. But according to public documents, he held up the first page, your family came from Poland in the late 19th century. A murmur went through the studio. That means Bernie Sanders is a second-generation American, just like me, just like millions of others. But Keanu wasn't finished. His voice grew sharper, more precise, surgical. And now for the ironic part. Your family, he said, didn't come because of war or persecution. Not as refugees, not to flee, but because they were seeking work. A few laughs, a few shocked faces. Sanders's expression was frozen, but the color had drained from his face. That's right, Keanu said. The man who tells me to go back to where I came from himself comes from Polish immigrants who came to this country to find work. The murmuring grew. The irony was not to be overlooked, but Keanu had another ace up his sleeve. And now it gets really interesting, he said, now fully in command of the room. Your great-grandfather, Mr. Meyer Sanders, was denied entry by the U.S. immigration authorities twice. The reason? He couldn't support himself. No money, no prospects. Sanders tried to interrupt. That's absurd, you can't. But I can, Keanu cut him off with a calm, final voice. Because according to the same records, he continued, your great-grandfather was exactly what you want to exclude today. A penniless, hopeful foreigner who wanted to bring something to this country, but who was initially not believed. Then he looked directly into the camera again. In other words, Meyer Sanders was exactly the kind of immigrant that his great-grandson publicly rejects today. The studio erupted in applause, disbelieving laughter, and scattered shouts. But Keanu calmly raised a finger. My favorite part is yet to come, he said. The immigration application that finally brought Meyer Sanders to America, Keanu Reeves now said, was sponsored by a wealthy Irish-American entrepreneur, and with that sentence, the studio fell into absolute silence. That's right, Keanu said, his voice now firmer, calmer, with growing strength. Your family is only here because someone who looked like me believed in the American dream enough to help them, to support them, to sponsor them. He turned directly to Bernie Sanders. When you told me to go back to where I came from, you didn't just insult me. You insulted the people who made your own existence in this country possible in the first place. It was silent again. No movement, no sound, only gazes, all directed at him. Keanu Reeves stood there, unmoved, determined. And suddenly, everyone in the room knew this was no longer a moment. It was a turning point. Yes, exactly, he repeated. Bernie Sanders' family could only come to America because an immigrant, a so-called outsider, vouched for them and believed in them. He looked at him, fixed, unwavering. When you told me I don't belong here, you said it to the descendant of the man who made your family's life here possible in the first place. Even Sanders' supporters couldn't hide it now. Some shook their heads, others looked away, abashed. The irony was unmistakable, but Keanu wasn't finished. "You want to talk about true Americans," he said, now standing up with the posture of a general giving a final command. "Then let me tell you what true Americans do." He didn't have to shout, he just had to breathe. True Americans don't judge each other by the color of their skin, their last name, or their grandparents, but by their character, their stance, by what they are willing to give for this country. He looked at him, without hatred, but without a jot of leniency. True Americans don't build careers on division and hatred. They build legacies through courage, through truth, through responsibility. The studio roared, applause, shouts. Even some of the camera crew spontaneously clapped. Keanu Reeves let it build. Then, with a single sentence, he brought it back to the point. "You know, Mr. Sanders, what the difference between us is?" His voice was now quiet but penetrating. "My family came with nothing and gave this country everything." He paused. "Your family came with nothing and taught their descendants to look down on others who have done the same." A moment of silence, then thunderous applause again. "I've spent my entire adult life serving this country, in my art and charity, in spaces no one will ever see. And you've spent your years trying to build a career on a platform of division and a rigid worldview." Then softer, sharper. "So before you ever question anyone's loyalty again, look in the mirror and ask yourself, what have you actually done to make America better?" He sat down calmly, composed, unassailable. Then, as if as an afterthought, "I believe you wanted to say something about tax policy, host." The studio exploded, this time with a standing ovation. The host tried to continue the debate, but she knew it. Everyone knew it. The debate was over. The direction had changed. That same night, Keanu Reeves' speech went viral. Reeves counters, Ashishi, true dignity, Masiitin, Sanders lost, were the top trends on all platforms. Politicians, activists, self-critics. Everyone was talking about one of the most powerful political moments of an entire generation. But the real wave didn't come through headlines, but through stories. Thousands of Americans shared their family stories of flight, of service, of belonging through decision, not through birth. Bernie Sanders' image crumbled in days. Donors pulled out, staff members left the team. The party distanced itself. His press conference fell flat. No one believed his explanations. The video had said it all. Keanu Reeves had become more than just the winner of a television duel. He had become a symbol, a memorial for what America truly stands for: quiet strength, earned respect, and the courage to stand for something greater. He hadn't shouted, hadn't provoked. He had only spoken the truth and let it take effect. And so he reminded the country of something it had almost forgotten: that greatness doesn't come from your origin, but from your standpoint. And on this evening, Keanu Reeves didn't just win a debate. He reminded America of what it should have always been. What we saw today was more than a debate. It was a moment of truth, raw, honest, and unavoidable. If stories like this move you, make you think, or challenge you, then you are in the right place. Subscribe to my channel now to not miss any of these intense, politically and emotionally charged narratives. Every week we tell what others conceal, unvarnished, profound, and with the courage to be clear. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, who you are is not determined by where you come from, but by what you are willing to stand for. I share a new story every week. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.